Dudes to Dads, brought to you by Dad University, is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads, episode 168.
Wow.
Yep. We got a doozy for today.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, as I always say, none of these have anything to do with my life.
Right.
I don't pick topics that I'm having difficulty with.
This is really just one big psychology experiment.
It is.
And working out.
It is therapy for me.
Therapy.
So this one is called How to Get Your Child to Listen.
Yeah. Okay.
Raising a Good Listener.
Yeah.
Basically, we just want our kids to obey us and follow our directions at all times.
Sure.
And so this is the way to do it.
Totally realistic.
No, it's funny. I had probably mentioned at some point that I wanted to write a book called 1,000 Times. And that was how many times it takes to tell your children to do something before they actually get it.
Yeah. Well, do you think it's an age thing? I'm imagining that. Well, maybe not.
No. The answer is that it is our fault.
Okay.
I'm actually taking the blame.
All right.
There are certain aspects, you know, and here's what's funny, because I was having some issues with this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really got to do an episode about this because I need to research this and learn. And it really is good because it brings back up things that you say, oh, of course, I already know that.
Yeah.
Like, of course I should be doing that.
Yeah.
And so it allows me and the millions of other listeners to kind of, you know, set a focus and say, okay, you know what? I need to be doing these things a little better.
Totally.
So we, in episode 144, talked about 11 ways to improve your listening skills. Mm-hmm. So that was something that was fairly recent. But what about, and that was for the adults. But I want to focus this one on how to get your kids to listen to you. Mm-hmm. It's a big problem. You know, and it's not just myself. I mean, I have this issue and talk with many parents who have a very similar issue.
Sure.
So I think there's certainly commonalities, but I think it can be greatly affected and improved by our actions. You know, of course, just like anything, that we can learn how to deal with these things better.
Right.
So I don't think the problem is so much the child's fault. It actually is ours, which I hate to admit.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, when we talk about listening, it means that we want them to do something that they are supposed to do anyways. You know?
Yeah, I guess that was my question I had in the back of my mind, is that what do you mean by listening? It's one thing to sit there and go, and then just sit there and listen to you, but another thing to, like you said, take an action or...
Yeah, it's something we want them to do, they should have done, we had already told them to do it, you know, and that could be anything from eating, cleaning, but I mean, all that stuff, getting dressed, getting ready in the morning. I mean, there's a ton of examples, and we'll go over them.
All right.
But we often, you know, resort to repeating ourselves, nagging, ignoring the problem, thinking that that'll help. There's just a lot. So if we're to do the opposite and actually do what might be effective, we're not going to repeat ourselves. Mm-hmm. We're going to take action quickly. And we're going to allow natural consequences to happen. And so that's what I'm going to talk about.
We have had touched on this before. Mm-hmm. Natural consequences came up before. Yeah.
So this is starting with most likely toddler age. I mean, they have to be able to understand some things.
Sure.
You know, the difficulty with someone with a toddler is that they're still figuring out the world. So a lot of things don't make sense. They make sense to us, but they don't make sense to the toddler. So you got to keep that with a grain, you know, that's a little bit of grain of salt with that. And this doesn't happen overnight. I mean, this is something that evolves. And as your children get a little bit older into elementary school age and such, it begins to click. Everyone's, you know.
We've talked about, sorry to digress so much, but like toddler, what age group is that?
Three-ish, two, 3, 4.
Yeah, like when they're walking and kind of have a limited vocabulary.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're talking.
Gotcha. That's kind of what I thought. I just wanted to be clear.
They still don't make sense of the world. I mean, it's like before preschool.
Yeah.
You know, but in preschool they're maybe 5.
Yeah, right.
That kind of thing, or kindergarten.
Totally makes sense.
And so, it really is a long, drawn-out process of pain of teaching them. So what are the things that we can do? Because once they get into the teen years, you're hoping that you've trained them fairly well, or that you've coached them along so that they can take care of themselves, and you're not going to be asking them to do a bunch of things. Now, there is a whole set of new problems with teens.
For sure.
So you want to try to eliminate some of that stuff early.
Yeah.
And get it on the right track so that it doesn't get worse as they get into teens.
When the hormones start kicking in.
Yeah. So let's go over some ways that we can improve the child's listening skills and or how we deliver the information.
Okay.
So the first one is monkey see, monkey do, which is pretty much the top of every one of our lists. This means you got to check yourself and make sure that you are listening to your kids when they ask something of you. And you got to really be honest about that, is because it will happen where your child will ask you something, you say, yeah, I'll do it later. Or yeah, I'll get to that. Or yeah, sure, no problem. And then you don't follow through.
Yeah.
And you don't do it. So you have to, if you want your child to listen to you and you're going to have the expectation that all of a sudden they're going to be listening, you have to listen as well.
Sure.
It's pure and simple. They're going to see how you act and how you do it.
Yep.
The second one, use less words. So, if you can use one word, that's the best. Like as an example, upstairs.
Yeah.
Eat. They're not eating their
Maybe
food.
a phoneme.
Yeah, I mean, we often confuse our kids with too many words.
Yeah.
Too many commands that are involved. Hey, it's nighttime. You need to go to sleep, and so make sure you're going up the stairs. But no, upstairs.
Right.
It's just one word, and so that is something that, just use less communication, actually. Just one word, cavemen.
Right.
They're cave people.
Yeah.
The third thing, create a routine. Making a morning or evening schedule is going to help them have to hear less commands.
Yeah. And we talked about how to do that with actually building it together.
Correct.
So that they have involvement with their own rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're going to help create their morning schedule and their evening schedule.
Previous episodes of...
Yeah. So now keep in mind, the schedule can crumble quickly if you don't stick to it or the cause of the schedule not to be followed is you.
Sure.
Meaning you're not referring to the schedule, you're not trying to keep that schedule, and you're not teaching them about the schedule. Having something posted and creating a schedule then means nothing.
Right.
It's this, it's this special occasion, and I should say special occasions are fine, but then every so often, or it becomes more frequent that they're staying up later, or they're doing this later, or this something changes, and so you got to figure that one out. The fourth thing, ask questions. So instead of giving commands, ask them a question, because young children especially, like to answer questions that they know the answer to.
Right.
So instead of saying, get upstairs, it says, hey, what do we do next after we've put the dishes away?
Right.
Oh, and maybe the answer is go upstairs and take a bath or a shower or whatever, or what do we do after we take a bath?
Yeah. Brush our
teeth. Answer would be brush your teeth. Right. And so you allow them to provide the answer.
Yeah.
And rather than giving them a command. And that's a really good one.
I like that.
Especially when they're young.
Yeah. Because they do, like you said, they know the answer and they want to answer for it.
Yeah. As they get a little bit older, and if you haven't done too much of that or so, they will often either pretend they don't know. That often happens. Or they'll say, I know. They just don't want to do it.
Right.
So we get a lot of I knows in our house. So I said, well, if you knew it, why is it not?
Well, then
being
you know
done?
to do it. Then
right. Hey, that's a good one. You're a poet and you don't even know it. Number 5, positive reinforcement. So when they are doing what they're supposed to, and they're listening to something that you're talking about, make a big deal about it. Gosh, you were so helpful getting, into the car on time this morning. I really appreciate that. Something, whatever. Hey, when we were going to sleep last night, you went straight up the stairs, read the book, and there was no argument. That was awesome. The positive reinforcement goes a long way. They really, really like that positive reinforcement rather than having to yell.
Sure.
Number 6, Be direct. So saying something like, maybe you should clean up your room. That's kind of a wishy-washy thing to say. Mm-hmm. It's like, maybe you should, or I think it would be a good idea if you put your dishes away. Those are kind of like maybes.
Yeah. And ominous if you're like part of the mafia or something.
Yeah. Instead, it's please clean your room.
Right.
Straightforward. Yeah. Or your dishes need to be put away after dinner.
Right.
It's straightforward.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's better to ask the question because it allows them to have that input and to think about what they're doing.
Right.
But if you're going to be direct, be direct.
Yeah.
If you're not going to ask the question, just don't be wishy-washy about it. Number 7, make sure you have their attention. So, when they're in the middle of a video game or they're watching TV and you yell out a command, they aren't going to hear you. So, having eye contact is something that you're going to want. If you have to turn off whatever's going on first or pause it and then, have the discussion, yelling upstairs or down a hall, same kind of thing. You're probably not getting their full attention.
Yeah, right.
Hey, blah, 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 down. If it's really important, go directly to them, look in their eye, and say it.
Yeah.
And you even say, hey, do you understand what I'm saying?
Did me stomping up the stairs get you some clarification of what you need to do right now?
Right. You want to make sure you have their attention, and if you don't, go back and get that first.
Right.
That probably should have been number 1.
Sure.
Before anything else, you have to have their
that
attention.
Always, you diverge from that sometimes. So.
And the most important thing about getting children to listen, okay? This is the end all be all. Most to me, if you have one takeaway. Number 8, natural consequences. Okay?
Right.
Now, we have spoken about natural consequences, and I'll try to articulate this the best that I can. So you have to let consequences happen when the child is not listening or doing what they are supposed to be doing. So I'll give you an example. If the child is consistently late for school, now you have to look and make sure you're not the one late and you're not the one hurrying out the door. Like if you're literally waiting, whether it's in the car, you're yelling at your child to hurry up, all of that.
Yeah.
If you have another child, so you have 2, you have to be aware of this.
Okay.
Or you have a spouse at home, this can help too.
Okay.
So here's what you would do. You'd say, hey, first of all, you'd give them a warning, and you'd say, hey, whether it's, hey, tomorrow morning when you get up, if you're not ready by 7:30, the car is leaving either way. Okay?
Right.
Now, you can do that if you have a spouse at home and or you have another child that needs to be at school, who you need to get to school.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an only child or you're a single parent or whatever, and you don't have the ability to do that, then the other option is to say, we are leaving at 7:30 or we are not going.
Right.
And in either case, you have to follow through. Now, the child might get in trouble at school. They could get suspended, detention, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So what?
Right.
You actually have to let that happen. I have heard instances of this working, it happening. Some people think it's cruel. It works.
Sure.
And what will happen is that your child will understand how important and serious that is. Yeah. Because what happens is when you are yelling at them and you're saying, hurry up, blah, 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 that becomes the crutch, and they understand that that is not as bad as them being ready or doing whatever. It's less worse. They're okay with themselves being yelled at or whatever because they don't have to hurry. They can take more time. They can watch TV, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you actually follow through with that, they know you are not kidding around.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard. I'm admitting it's hard to do as a parent, but you have to do it.
Yeah. I like the idea of natural consequences. Obviously, to an extent, you don't want a kid to be hurt.
No. You have to keep their safety
put them in
mind.
danger, of course. But I do like you said, the consequences aren't life-threatening or anything. They're actually there to kind of teach them a lesson.
The car's leaving and they're not dressed. They wear their pajamas to school.
Right,
now,
so you want to go to school like
now
that?
Here's what will happen. There are kids certainly who won't care about that.
They have that like attention grabbing thing,
or they just don't care about, quote, pleasing anybody. They're like, they're going to do what they're going to do. Now, as kids get older, they are more inclined to probably not care, want to miss school. Like all the stuff that you're going to try to use against them is not going to work as well.
Right.
It's going to work better when they're younger. And so if you're getting to a point when they're older and these kinds of things are having to be done, you might have to look at a couple different things. Right. So I'll give you another example that might work is an alarm clock. Mm-hmm. So many parents will wake up their children in the morning. And that's fine when they're really young. But children ultimately should use an alarm clock and be responsible for getting themselves up in the morning. Mm-hmm. Now, some kids might have difficulty getting up. Mm-hmm. I'm going to guess that the reason they often do it is because they are underslept. Mm-hmm. And, they need to go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Mm-hmm. They're not getting enough sleep. Yeah, of course they're tired. So they need to go to sleep earlier.
Right.
So there's the excuse that's like, well, they just have trouble getting up. Well, they should need to go to bed earlier.
Right.
Or figure out better ways for them to get up. So the alarm becomes their own responsibility. And maybe there's a training period where, the alarm goes off and then you help, but you're weaning off it's your responsibility to wake them up.
I also think that consistent bedtimes is a big deal. And mm-hmm. I've noticed that my friends with kids or even cousins that I've had, when they went to bed consistently at a certain time, then even if they were allowed to stay up a little bit later, they're really sleepy by that time. So they're like, and they just knock out anyway. So like, and then they get up bright and early, and generally speaking, their normal routine.
Right.
So I totally agree.
And here's the thing. Now, if a parent doesn't care about having to wake their kid up every day and doesn't care about having to bug them, that's their prerogative. Like, then it's not as big of a problem. Mm-hmm. But you might find that you're going to deal with other problems of the child not being as self-sufficient as you may want.
Right.
Now, if you're okay with that, then who cares? Then you're fine.
Right.
But to hear some parents complain about that, like, I'm always having to get them up, or I'm always having to, that's where it's difficult. It's like you have to look at what's going on and why are they not getting up, and are they responsible for themselves at a certain point? Yeah. You get to decide what that is, whether that is, elementary school, junior high school, or you're going to wait until they're in college. You know? Yeah. I mean, either way, or they're 35 and still living at home, and that's fine too. If everybody's happy, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
That guy on the news, it's 30 years old, and his parents are evicting him from their house.
Oh,
did you hear about this?
No.
Oh, goodness. It's pretty funny.
It's kind of sad.
So, you just have, I should say, parents just want their kids to be self-sufficient and compliant, of course. It really comes down to how we are approaching the situation and how we are doing it. So for me to blame my kids for not listening, I have to check that and say, you know what? Am I really dealing with it in the best way possible?
Right.
And I can see, some of these things we do well. Some of these things we don't. Like, we've tried to have routines, we have schedules. I ask them questions. I do these. I probably could give them more positive reinforcement, or certain things, or being direct. I mean, we all have the ability to improve what it is. And for me, them listening is really important. So I need to look at myself and be like, okay, well, what can I do better, instead of thinking that it's always their fault?
Sure.
Because I can tell you, and many times I think it's their fault. Right. And after doing this, I'm like, oh wow, it's not their fault. It's not. I mean, they're still learning the ways of the world.
Yeah, and they're testing out the waters just as much. So.
Yeah. So I just think, these are the types of activities we need to do to get them to, listen and follow our commands.
Exactly.
Military style. So, Alan, if anyone has any comments, feedback, suggestions, what should they do?
They should email us, podcast@dudesToDads.com, or hit us up on our many social media outlets, Twitter @DudesToDads, Facebook, DudesToDads.com, YouTube, Dudes to Dads and Dad University. Go there. Some great videos by Jason related to Dad University, and that overlaps a lot of stuff we talk about here. And please go to iTunes and Stitcher or any other place you see our podcast. hit that 5-star or a thumbs up and leave a review and subscribe to those networks, and it helps perpetuate our show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
So do you think you're a good listener?
I'm totally a good listener. A good obeyer is a whole different thing.
Right on. All right. Well, with that, thanks, Alan, as always, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.